Conservatives, GB News and society alike have lambasted universities recently. Rishi Sunak has engaged a crackdown on so-called rip-off degrees. Right-leaning commentators and ministers branded universities as hubs of wokery, and Labour was criticised for dropping its free tuition pledge. What is really going on with our internationally revered, renowned and respected higher education system? What is beneath the ruby-studded curtains? Who is exploiting our system? And where has conservative rule led our higher education system here in the United Kingdom? Welcome to Mission Undercover, Britain's higher education's Enigma. I'll start with discussing the right's incessant love affair with linking universities to wokery. There aren't really a number of reasons I can see for that, beyond the fact that academically inclined voters usually vote overwhelmingly for Labour. However, that depends on what lens you look through. For example, it is sensible to believe that most of the upper classes within the elite universities of London will be hereditary Tories. The reason that university has become such a problem for them is very simple. Universities are not hubs of wokery, they're hubs of debate and discussion, research and innovation. When I refer to the right, I mainly refer to Tories and the right-wing media, the establishment that currently dictates our political future, and largely now, our political perception as a nation. The right feels threatened because our educated minds will alter that perception, see through the lies and the hatred of their policies, agendas, and rhetoric. This is why we need to improve our education system, review its effectiveness and reform it, so that we can educate a political generation of informed minds that can repel the extremism, the racism, and the deception that plagues our society. But what are the problems we need to solve in order to achieve this? Coming up next on Mission Undercover. A key issue often brought up in these discussions is affordability. So I ask, is free tuition the way forward? Germany, Scotland and Finland alike have shown how it can be so effective. However, our economic realities pose a severe challenge to this success. The Treasury doesn't have the means to subsidise education in the current economic climate. However, once the dust settles, free tuition can be brought in. Measures to raise funding could include scrapping the non-dom tax, increasing windfall tax, and unfreezing, even increasing fuel duty. Even a small taxation charge, a higher education surcharge, like national insurance, could make this viable. The surcharge would be peanuts when compared to the enormity of student debt. Free tuition, as we once had, is possible once again, a true demonstration of the might of the state. All that is necessary is political will. Government subsidies for education would help struggling universities. After all, the tuition-paying student cannot aid with the costs of running a university. A step towards free tuition would be to gradually reduce the current £9,250 cap year on year until it reaches zero. This would create a stable plan, a roadmap that can be viewed with assurance by deans, donors, and prospective students. The larger pool of talent, no longer tainted by affordability, would create a thriving environment of competition and a compounding innovation, a new dawn for higher education. Speaking of a new dawn, Rishi Sunak is trying to hail one. What is the true impact and story of his education choices, from maths to 18 to the degree crackdown? Coming up next on Mission Undercover. Rishi Sunak has enacted multiple education policies. To look at his policies for education as a whole can help us understand the impact on higher education. Firstly, he has recently enacted a crackdown on so-called low-value degrees as part of the Theresa May commissioned Algo review. These are courses with high dropout rates and low graduate outcomes. I believe this policy may be good for prospects and outcomes broadly, but will penalise a minority who do wish to study those subjects. The government could encourage specialist external courses in the removed subjects, but the solution still remains unclear. Additionally, other recommendations of the Algo review, such as tuition fee cuts and increased further education spending, were seemingly ignored. One welcome policy, however, is a reduction of the cap on foundation year fees, significantly from £9,000 to £5,400. Another Sunak policy has been to prevent postgraduate international students from bringing dependents with them on their course. While this was a loophole worth closing, it's not wise considering the sizable and vital contribution international fees make to university funding. Brexit will also impact this contribution. The impact of COVID on funding, combined with Brexit and the dependence policy, has landed a Tory triple thwack to higher education. In an economically difficult time, the dependent policy could have definitely held fire. And Brexit has done us yet another glorious favour. We've been liberated from the advanced Europe-wide research networks and funding that don't help us. Well, so they say. These were vital for our universities as a source for research and innovation. And Brexit has also prevented international students from having a safe and easy access route to UK universities. The Johnson administration's success on apprenticeships and skills poses a question for universities as well. It challenges the relevance of degrees, and Sunak has also improved skills provision further. It poses a uniquely positive enigma of choice between degrees and alternative education. That's it for this segment. We will now conclude by considering the final challenges that face the British nation in the years to come. One interesting thing before we look at the challenges to come for UK higher education. I've seen reports and anecdotes of exploitation of the British system, which may have been a factor to influence Mr Sunak's dependence policy. It is a pretty much well-known fact in government circles that certain groups and individuals from abroad are arriving in the UK on a student visa and settling in the UK permanently. Numerous agents and scammers use social media abroad to advertise illegal migration. Student visa remains a popular route for illegal settlement. To be clear about the situation, using the student visa to get a foot in poses unimaginable risk. You're not allowed to work while on a student visa. A family having to support fees and day-to-day costs would not be able to cope. Additionally, situations like this put a strain on an already stretched education and asylum system. We need to provide more flexible routes of legal migration and more routes for migration from specific countries as well, so that other British industries aren't negatively affected like this. We've already talked about the challenge of funding for British higher education, so something different now. A challenge for British higher education is inequality in universities. Take this statistic from the University of Manchester. As of 2019, only 6% of UK pupils are privately educated, yet 55% of Russell Group University students are privately educated. This is an outrageous number. It's outrageous that the system can be so vehemently in favour of students who have paid their way into the system. Listen to this from Isaac Silas-Bassina. He says, "This is a problem that perpetuates the entrenched foundations of inequality by limiting the scope for social mobility within Britain's most disadvantaged communities." It's worth noting that despite applications from disadvantaged pupils being at an all-time high, the applications from wealthy students are also increasing at an even faster rate. The inequality is still entrenched, stagnant if not deeper in the system, as the gap in social class increases drastically year on year. And the disadvantaged students mainly end up at lower-end universities anyway, which means that the coveted Russell Group remains deeply entrenched within the class ceiling. How do we solve this social inequality? We must work together to offer solutions, but the first thing that comes to mind is the Labour leader's proposal to remove charity status for elite private schools. Social inequality is no charity. However, this is obviously insufficient. Reducing fees is something we've talked about, but one major solution could be to increase taxes on private schools that have fees above a certain threshold. Then, use the collected revenues to fund state schools. Additionally, implementing quotas for Russell Group universities to admit non-private school students. Private schools will respond inevitably by increasing fees. A progressive taxation on fees would prevent these elite schools from wriggling out or giving their fair share, not to deans and donors, but to the country they have divided. Another challenge for higher education is the provision of accommodation. With an acute housing crisis, how can our cash-strapped institutions uphold housing standards? The case is the same with education infrastructure. Without government subsidies for these things, it seems students will be out in a new world of difficulty, a university experience of inconvenience, mediocrity and frustration on the horizon. something to ponder for the future. And finally, the challenge of student well-being. Students are ever pressured by tough finances, strenuous schedules, and exam stress. But what can our system do to ease these pressures? Finances are a tough one to crack, due to the tough reality of the economy today. However, the other two have some possible solutions. Less of a focus on examination, and more on practical experience, and more of a focus on appropriate downtime in university schedules. These two measures would for sure increase outcomes in courses and beyond, and reduce the rampant rates of crime and suicide that students are turning to in an environment of stress and financial difficulty. Many challenges remain in the future for the UK's higher education system. Tough solutions will be necessary. Which brings us to the end of this episode of Mission Undercover. Thank you for listening. We have uncovered Britain's higher education enigma. Join Mission Undercover next time for more podcast content coming soon.